This is some help with translating the passages in Unit 1. These are some passages from a little Latin reader that have to do with relative clauses. This is not meant to translate the passages for you. This is just to show you some parts and give you a sense of how you want to approach a translation passage, and then you can apply what you learn to the rest of the passages. Remember also there are lots of notes in a little Latin reader at the end of each passage. So let's look at the beginning of the first sentence of 26.1. Notice that I've done some things with the layout and I've underlined some words. I've underlined Gallia, omnis, and divisa. These are the words that are in the nominative. So Gallia is our subject, Gaul. Omnis is an adjective modifying Gallia. And divisa, as the note tells you, is a perfect passive participle being used as an adjective. So it's the predicate, or what you might know as the complement. It's what comes after the is. So the first part, all Gaul is divided. Now we have a prepositional phrase, in partes tres. Now you might be more familiar with the forms partes tres. And we have in plus the accusative, so we're going to translate into. So all Gaul is divided into 3 parts. Now, next comes a subordinate clause. It's a relative clause. We see quorum. As you know, every relative pronoun has to have an antecedent. The arrow points to the antecedent. So the antecedent of quorum is partes. It's feminine and plural because partes is feminine and plural. Quorum, however, is genitive because of its function within its own clause. So let's look at that relative clause. Quorum, genitive, we want to use of in our translation. So of which because it refers to parts and it's not people. Unam, accusative. Maybe we don't know what to do with that yet. Incolunt, there's a third person plural verb. Oh, now look, belgae, a nominative plural. That can be a subject of a plural verb like incolunt. So the Belgians inhabit, oh, now we can use that accusative. Unam, there's our direct object. The Belgians inhabit one, i.e. part. So to recap, of which the Belgians inhabit one. Now, what we have next is just a parallel phrase. Aliam aquitani. Now notice that there's no verb in this, but that's okay, because we can supply the verb from what comes before. So, aliam incolunt aquitani. So the Aquitanians inhabit another parallel construction. So putting the whole thing together, all Gaul is divided into 3 parts, of which the Belgae, the Belgians, inhabit one, the Aquitanians inhabit another. Let's look at one more sentence. This one has a whole series of relative clauses. As you can see from the layout, the main sentence is et cum eis una comium mittit. And the rest are just relative clauses, and as you can see from the arrows, the antecedent of all those relative pronouns is comium. So those relative clauses all describe comius. Now your note tells you that the subject of mittit is Caesar, implied. So let's do our main clause. Et cum eis una. And together with these, now we need our subject, he or Caesar. Mittit sends. Now go back to your direct object, comius. So, and together with these, he sends comius. That's a perfectly good sentence. That's our main clause. Now the relative clauses all describe comius. So you can see the arrows. Comium, there is the antecedent of quem, cuius, quem, and cuius. Now, let's look at that first one. Quem ipse, and so forth. Quem is accusative. So it's masculine and singular because comium is its antecedent. It's accusative because it is functioning as a direct object in its own clause. Sometimes I like to take that relative clause and treat it like its own little sentence and then put it back in. So let's, instead of quem, let's just use a regular pronoun like him. So ipse, your note again tells you this refers to Caesar. He himself, i.e. Caesar, constituerat, pluperfect, had appointed quem, we'll say him for the moment. So he himself had appointed him. Appointed him what? Regem. Had appointed him king, ibi, there. Now, in parentheses, what we have is an ablative absolute. Atrebatibus superatis. So that means with the atrebatis having been conquered. So putting the whole thing together with the main clause, just doing that main clause and the first relative clause so far. And together with these, he sends Commius, whom he himself had appointed king there, with the Atrebates having been conquered. Now notice the next relative pronoun is in the genitive. The antecedent is still Commius, but now it's a possessive. So remember, with the genitive, we want to use the word of. And when we're referring to a person, we could also say whose. So cuius could be of whom or whose. And then you can, I think, take it from there.